Now, if you're a photographer who uses Lightroom Classic, I am willing to bet that I've got some tips in this video that you are not aware of that's gonna help you to harness the powers of Lightroom Classic. Now, in this video, we're gonna cover 10 of my favorite tips and tricks in Lightroom Classic that cover things from basic organizational structures all the way to things like how to improve your images with basic masking workflows or even advanced masking workflows. It's gonna be kind of a quick fire video. I don't wanna waste any more time on the introduction. Let's go ahead and jump right on in there. First thing we've got here is going to be making duplicate copies of your image, which is indicated by this little page turn thing in the corner here. Now this is really helpful to create multiple copies of an image because, like in this example, this is the original image, and then I created another copy where I cropped it down, and then I also, you can see, adjusted the tilt of the image. I kind of tilted the image to make it a little more straight on the bottom, and then I created another copy to create a darker version. Now these are all the same photo. You can see it's 7190.dng, and the benefit of doing it this way is that I've now created multiple different edits of the same photo, but this is just a digital copy of the image, allowing me to basically create more copies of the image without increasing the space, the storage space on my disk drive. Now this is pretty easy to do. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. You're going to, while you're in the library module here, click on your photo and you're going to right click that photo. You're going to go down to create virtual copy, and it's just going to create another copy. You can see down here in the thumbnail view, the thumb strip view, that it creates this new copy, and then it also says copy 3. So copy 1, copy 2, and then copy 3. Now when you delete these, you can simply just press delete and they will go away. Super, super easy to use and to create copies of your image. Now the next tip goes hand in hand with this one, and that is to stack images together. So say I'm done editing these 3 images, or say I do a focus stack or an HDR blend or anything like that, and I want to stack the photos together to increase the organizational structure. You can click on the image and you click on the one that you want to be the cover of the stack, which will make more sense in a second, and then hold shift and click on the last image. So this is going to select all 3 here. Right click and then go down to stacking, group into stack. Now it's going to stack them. You'll see that this image, the first one I selected, is now the cover. You can open that stack down here, and it just helps to keep things a little more organized. You can see if I go into here to one of my catalogs, like this one, I've got lots of things stacked where I've done things like, you know, a panorama here, or I've done things like maybe a focus stack or a adjusting the shutter speed between images. Just any time where I want to stack images together, I will stack them here. Or even if I've edited a photo in Lightroom and then I'll bring it into Photoshop and bring back the other saved version, I will do that here and stack them. It just helps to increase the organization, so I'd highly recommend using stacking to your advantage. Now on the topic of stacking images together, I want to show you how you can automatically stack things together based on capture time, which is a feature added in the last year or so to Lightroom. So you go in here, let's say I'm looking at all of these photos from this shoot, and you know, there's a lot of focus stacks, HDR blends, whatever it may be, and rather than clicking on each image and looking at the capture date and time and trying to find the ones that were all part of a focus stack, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to automatically stack these based on the capture time, because I know if I've done a focus stack that the images are going to be shot like 5 or less seconds apart, and so then we can automatically stack them together. So we're going to go up here. I always go up to help and just type auto stack. It's just easier than finding it in the menu, but if you want to find it in the menu, it's under photo stacking and then auto stack by capture time. You select that, and then it's going to allow you to adjust the time between stacks. So if I wanted to do like a minute between photos, meaning a minute between each photo, and then we'll stack everything together, you could. But for most case scenarios, I think you'll want to do like 5 seconds or less to capture bursts, HDRs, focus stacks, things like that. If you have automatic focus stacking, you can also do something like 3 or 2 seconds. Now this is going to take the time between each image, not the time from the first image to the last image. So as long as, you know, even if the focus stack took you 30 seconds, as long as it's like 8 images and you're taking a photo every 3 to 4 seconds, 5 seconds will include everything. So you can hit stack, we'll scroll back up to the top. Now we can see as we scroll over here, look how many images we have stacked together. So we've got like a stack of 3 here. If I open that up, you can see, okay, this is an HDR blend. We've got darker image, lighter image, and then neutral image. So it just really makes it easy for me to know that, okay, now these are the images I'm gonna merge together as an HDR blend, rather than having to sort through and find them by myself. Okay, another one of my favorite things to do here is to customize the workspace. If you know me and you've watched my videos for long, you know how much I hate that overly busy and crowded workspace. I think for those of you who are really learning to harness the power powers of the software, having that overly busy workspace is really difficult. Let me show you how I overcome that. So I'll open up an image in the develop module. It doesn't matter what image. I'm going to scroll over and click anywhere where it's like this kind of darker color. Like we see where it says basic, I can click just to the left of there. I can right click and I can click customize develop panel. Now I can turn on or turn off any option that I want over here. So for example, I usually turn off color grading. I usually turn off transform. I turn off lens blur. I don't need those three things. I leave everything else on because occasionally I'll use them, but if there's anything else that you don't use in there, you can turn it off as well and hit save. Then that makes it so that I have a lot less stuff on the right side of the screen, so I have less to scroll through. Additionally, you can also adjust the order if you want to say put the tone curve above the basic tab. You'll have to relaunch if you want to do that, but that is possible as well. Now, if you go back to the library tab here, it's the same thing on the left side. You can check or uncheck. So I don't use folders, I'll uncheck that. I don't use published services, I'll uncheck that as well. Just helps to simplify the screen. This might seem like a little thing, but it's something that I would highly recommend. Simplifying the workspace is going to help you to make it a lot easier to use. Next is the ability to filter by metadata, which is a really easy way to find photos in your catalog. So if I go to all photographs here, and then let's say I go up to metadata. Now you're gonna need to be in library module in the grid view, which you can find down here, and then you should have these options. You can filter by text. So if you have any sort of keywording in here, you can do that here. You can filter by attributes. So if you use like a color system, a flag system, a star system, you can do that. Or by metadata is actually one of the most powerful ways to do it. So I'll use this all the time if I say like, hey, I wanna find images that were shot with my 70 to 300. I click on that. Now this opens up all the images I have that are shot with 70 to 300. Now you can use multiple different things here to kind of refine this down. So for example, if I only wanted to see stuff shot in say this year, I can click 2026. And then I can go in, I only wanna see stuff shot with my new A7R Mark VI. And I only wanna see stuff that's shot with a 16 to 25 in landscape ratio. Now this is showing me only things that were shot this year with my A7R Mark VI with my 16 to 25 in landscape ratio. So this is really nice. The aspect ratio portion over here is really nice to show portrait, which is oftentimes very, very helpful if you're gonna do something like a social media post or an Instagram reel where you want to have portrait stuff only and you don't wanna see your other landscape photos. And of course you can do more than filter by just these four things. Clicking this option allows you to filter by so many different things. Focal length, shutter speed, I mean, any of your camera settings, if you have GPS data, where you were at when you shot it, whether you use masking or not, you can filter by almost anything. And I find that a lot of people don't know this. So anytime you're trying to find a specific photo or look at a certain set of photos shot with only a particular lens, camera, anything like that, you can do that here in this metadata option. Now we briefly touched on this one earlier, but I want to circle back to it real quickly, and that is how you can compare images when you have maybe multiple images that are very similar or multiple edits or anything like that. So to compare images, you can select one image and then hold Command on Mac or Control on PC, click on the other image, and then hit the C button on your keyboard to compare. You can close things down here to make it a little bit larger if you want, and then you can compare photos. This is also really nice because when you zoom in on one, it zooms in on the other. So if you have the same composition, like you've used a tripod, you can zoom in to see which one is sharper, and you can zoom in really as far as you want. In this instance, you can see I've done the same photo, multiple different edits, and I'm gonna compare it just like that. So I really love that compare view. And then when you're done, you can just go back down here and hit the grid view to go back to before. Okay, let's dive into some of the develop module settings and masking settings that you can use. That's, I would consider like little tips that a lot of people may or may not know about. So in the last couple of years, Adobe has added some more color profiles, most notably adaptive color. And when you select adaptive color, it is like applying a color profile to your image, but unlike some of the other options like Adobe Landscape or Adobe Color, which make very little difference, adaptive color is almost just like hitting the auto button when it comes to editing your photo, except for the fact that when you hit the auto button, all of these sliders will adjust, and you can only adjust the slider so far. This adaptive color will bring up the shadows and bring down the highlights without adjusting any of these sliders. So on one hand, it's kind of irritating that you now can't really refine this other than just increasing or decreasing the overall amount. But it is nice because it does give you access to really refine these sliders more than you could without using this color profile. Now, if you don't want to use that adaptive color profile because you want to edit it yourself, I would highly recommend using Adobe Landscape. Is probably one of my favorite for landscape photography. Or some of the other options like Adobe Color can be a little more neutral. Adobe Standard is just their standard profile. You know, Vivid can have a little bit stronger colors and contrast. Portrait can be good for portraits, but I would really recommend Adobe Landscape. I like that one for giving you a nice color profile to work with. It's totally up to you. Whatever you want to do though, I would choose one and stick with it because it's going to give you a little more consistent workflow. But the color profile and changing it can be very, very important. But for most people, if you don't know which one to use, I recommend choosing Adobe Landscape. Okay, this next one here is one of my favorites and it's almost like cheating. I've created a longer YouTube video on this that I can link here for you to watch if you want to see how this is done. But let me show you, I basically cheated to make this sunrise a lot better here. I mean, that looks way, way better. And in my opinion, it looks relatively realistic. Maybe it's a little bit magenta-y, but that's how it was that morning. You can see the magenta color on the clouds. Let me show you how that works. And it's going to be using this intersect tool that a lot of people don't understand. So let's hide that. So first things first, when you create a mask, you can do something like a select sky. Now let's say you want to do a select sky mask, but you only want to select a small part of the sky. That's where you do what's called an intersect. So when I click on these three dots, I go down to intersect mask and I go to intersect with a radial gradient in this example. Now when I draw the radial gradient, you can see because I'm intersecting the mask, it won't show me anything in the foreground. It's intersecting it with the sky. So I can only see the areas where both masks are masked in. I can increase the radius there. And then I can make this a little bit bigger, make that feather 100 and just get this to where you want. Put this about where the sun is going to be. Now you'll go in, we'll warm that up, we'll increase the exposure. Maybe we will go down and drop the dehaze and then let's increase the saturation. Let's warm that up more magenta, more light. Let's add a little bit of contrast back in there, more. And this looks a little bit different than my example, but every time you do this, it might look a little different, but you can see before and after. So we've just added that little bit of warmth in there by using this intersect tool with that sky mask. So easy to use, and you can use this intersect tool in many other ways, but this is probably one of my favorites and one of my most frequently used. All right, now number 9 here is selecting the white balance. I know can be a challenge. It can be really, really difficult, but I'm gonna show you my kind of trick to really adjusting the white balance and make it easy. So looking at this photo here, you might say the white balance is fine. You know, the snow looks white, but I'm gonna tell you the white balance is actually way off. Now, what I like to do is increase the vibrance and the saturation before I adjust the temperature and the tint, because it allows me to see what's going on in the image a lot better. Now, when I increase those, you can look and see just how magenta pink colored this is. That doesn't seem right because it's snowing. So that would be like one of the only colors this shouldn't be. It should be bluish with kind of a neutral tint. So we're going to counteract that magenta pink by kind of going towards green. And we don't want to go too far to where everything looks green because we don't want that either. But we really want this neutral about right there. And then while the tones may look neutral now, I'm actually okay if I get this a little bit cool toned, just like that. And then I'll turn down the vibrance and the saturation, and I can adjust these later to just bring them up. But this gives me more of an honest white balance, like a temperature and a tint. This works great on regular photos as well. I just wanted to show you on this example because it really stands out, but on really any photo that I have, I do really like to bring up the vibrance and saturation before I adjust the white balance. I really highly recommend that, especially for the newer photographers out there who might struggle. All right, the last tip here is something that I covered in a YouTube video a couple weeks ago, and that is that using the subject select might not always work, even after the update now that it's better. So when I select subject, you can see it'll do a pretty decent job and I can, adjust these sliders, but a lot of times it just doesn't make a great selection on the edge. You can see this looks kind of marginal right on the edge. It's kind of created this weird like noise looking thing right around the edge of my animal here, right in here. You see how this is kind of a little bit weird. Now, instead of doing it that way, what I'm gonna do is create a new mask and I'm gonna go in and select objects. I'm gonna select my brush, make the brush whatever size I need. It probably needs to be a little bit smaller. And then I'm just gonna draw around the object. This doesn't have to be exact or accurate, but just paint around it just like that. Now, oftentimes this will create a little bit better mask. You can see this is the object mask. This is the subject mask. So the object mask looks just a hair more selective, whereas the subject mask looks a little bit more basic. So I always like to try objects. Sometimes subject will work better than object, but always give it a try and try both to get that better selection to ultimately get that better adjustment on your photo when you go in and make those adjustments. So give that a try. That covers my 10 tips and tricks in Lightroom Classic. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys. If it was, please let me know down below in the comments. Greatly appreciate you guys for being here and subscribing to the channel. Now, if that was helpful and you like my teaching style, do check out this video that I will link right here on how to sharpen your photos in Lightroom Classic, the right way to sharpen, and it's probably not what you think. We'll link that video here. Make sure to check it out. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time. My name is Austin Jackson. Bye-bye.